Hey guys, welcome back to Dave's Small Engines. This video here, I'm just going to show you what I do and how I diagnose an issue with a small engine. So today I'm working on a Stihl MS180C. This is a smaller chainsaw in Stihl's line of homeowner chainsaws. The C stands for, I believe, the comfort line, although don't quote me on that. And it's supposed to be an easy to start pull start mechanism. However, in this case, it feels like it's connected directly to the cylinder. So I'm not sure why that's not working. So that'll be something that I'm looking into to try and fix. So I already have the bar and chain and cover off. And now I'm basically just going to tear it down and go over my general diagnosis as to why it won't run. Feels like it's got good compression. So I'm guessing probably a carburetor issue. But just watch as I tear it down. And if there's anything of note that I find or that I think is worth explaining, I will do so. So air filter looks pretty clean. Not really too concerned with that. First thing I'm going to do is check to see if this gets spark. So how I do that, pull the spark plug out, and I'll show you how I do that. Probably a bit aggressive using the DeWalt brushless, however. All right, so I will turn it to the on position, so I know I'm getting spark, and then I will pull the piston over and hold the spark plug to the top of the cylinder so it makes a connection, electrical connection, and then watch for a spark. So you can see if I can get that in the video here. It is sparking. Hard to keep it steady here for you guys, sorry about that. But there is a blue strong spark there. So now I know that spark isn't an issue. So another little thing that I like to try is just to see if I can get it to run on fuel. So I'll either use just a little dabble of 50-1 or some carb cleaner or something along those lines to see if I can get it to run with fuel, sort of bypassing the carburetor. All right, so I've got a little squirt bottle here. See if I can get some gas into there. I'll pop the cylinder, the spark plug back into the cylinder, and then see if I can get it to fire over. Just for testing purposes, it doesn't need to be torqued down. So in the on position, see if it'll go. So as you can imagine, that's really good news. That to me tells me that I'm just looking at a carburetor issue, fuel delivery being the problem. So that kind of dictates what I do from here on out. So the next part of this, I'll just take the carburetor out and see if I have a rebuild kit. If not, I'll have to put one on order, and then we should be up and running, no problem. So how do we dig into one of these things? Oh, okay, that looks promising. So what do we add here? got two, looks like 8mm bolts holding this air, kind of the air box on here. I don't know if we'll have to do it the old-fashioned way. Maybe we won't have to do it the old-fashioned way. Those two out. There we are. Okay, so I've got that air box off of there, and what we're looking at here is the carburetor. So when you hit the throttle, it actuates the arm here, which the internal throttle flap is there. And then this flap right here is simply just the choke. So choke fully on when you're starting it, and in the off run position. So make sure I don't lose those two nuts. Number one, number two is right here. Handy magnet stick. And I just kind of like to keep all the parts together in one spot for when I put it back together. Okay, so to get this carburetor out, what are we looking at here? Okay, we got to take this throttle arm off. So we pop this side through here like that, making sure we remember how it goes back on. It's all fine and dandy until we can't put it back together. And then the same thing again on this side as well. So that goes up and over somehow here. From the bottom, I think. There's got to be a way to get this out. Yes, so throttle on, and then it just pops out if you could hold the throttle flap down manually. So as I pull this out, I believe it's going to be connected. Yes, okay, so right in here is our fuel in line. So I'll take a flathead screwdriver and just kind of help that off. You guys can see that there. The fuel line's right here. So I pop that fuel line off. Then this carburetor should come out. So I might have to take this arm off. Now these are just two plastic, or just one plastic retaining clip here. Be very careful, because if you break this, you're up the creek. Just enough to get it down and out of the way so we can slide the carburetor off. Alrighty. So this is what we're working with here. This is a Zama carburetor. Fairly common. And now I'll do a teardown of the carburetor, and then hopefully I have the kit to rebuild it so I can get it back together and show you guys it working. So one thing I do every time I work on a carburetor is I get the trusty air compressor out and I blow the snot out of the exterior of this carburetor. The last thing that I want to do is get a piece of debris inside the freshly rebuilt carburetor. Cause tons of issues. The other thing I like to do is get a fresh blue towel. I don't know what it is about it, but being able to lay everything out on one surface is the one clean surface, and it gives me peace of mind, and then I like to organize everything as I take it apart. You don't need to use cordless stuff. I just find when I do, it just goes way faster, and if I'm doing a couple of these a day, on a day off from work or whatever, this is makes it much faster. So first thing I do is pop the pump side off, and you'll see, oh, Okay. Well, that's an interesting sign right there. Can't say I've ever seen that. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but this is coming out green for some reason. So I don't know what kind of fuel mixture that they had in here. But this pump diaphragm actually doesn't look all that bad. It's not really that creased or laminated. So I'm wondering if they just didn't have the right fuel in this saw. In any event, I'll take it apart and clean it up, and then maybe I'll try it again with this kit, this current carburetor kit, before I do a full rebuild. It's kind of got a weird smell to it too. Normally it doesn't smell like regular proper mixed Stihl 50-to-1 fuel. So now on to the metering side of things. Oh, okay. So right away, this diaphragm has rubble on it, debris, dirt, dust, crap, stuff that small engines don't like. Interesting. So I'll peel this off as well, this side, and then we'll go from there. Okay. So as you can see, this is like thick oil. It's like it's straight oil that's in here. Look at that. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but I can't say I've ever seen one this bad. It's like it's packed itself full of oil. So we'll get that all cleaned up, and then, yeah, wow. Well, it's no wonder it wasn't running. That's for sure. It's pretty bad. Maybe get the brake clean out for this. Yikes. So I think this pump diaphragm, as you can see, it's kind of creased. Usually means that, I'll get a closer view, usually means that it's time for a replacement. It should be pliable and soft. This is the part that meters the fuel on this lever here, which allows fuel in and out of the carburetor. So this part makes contact, that little bump there. Yeah, so this carburetor is full of junk, whatever this oily stuff is. You know what, the other thing I should have done at the very beginning is take this fuel tank off and see what kind of fuel was left. Now it kind of looks empty. Yeah, so the fuel tank's empty. So we might be running into a fuel filter issue as well, but we'll get to that later on. So this carburetor, any other things that I can undo, I like to undo without going too far. And usually, or on trimmers anyways, which is what I usually work on, there are two adjusting needles and an idle needle, and it only looks like there's an idle needle here. So I'm not going to take that out because I'm not really overly concerned with the idle circuit of this right now. But as you can see, it's still really gummed up in here. So I'm going to use some more brake clean and see if I can get that cleaned up. some brake clean and an air compressor to it. Now, I'm not convinced that these two needles aren't plugged in here. Sorry, these two, I believe they're relief needles or check valves, aren't plugged. But for the sake, so if they are, it doesn't matter if I put a new carb kit in it, it's still not going to work the way it's supposed to. So for the sake of argument, this diaphragm actually doesn't look too terrible. So what I'm going to do is put it all back together and see if I can get it running. And then if it's running, then I'll try a carb kit. And if I'm still not happy with that, then I'll just buy a replacement carburetor. So time to put it all back together here. There's lots of gunk still built up in here, which I don't like, but this way, this part of the process will save some money in the long run if it does run. I can tell you right now, that's all that gunk and all that crap that was in there when I first opened it up is the reason it wasn't running on its own without the carburetor. Probably the reason why it ended up in my hands. So I don't like to torque stuff down tight with the power tools. Helps for removing, helps for getting the first part of installation. But I like to just do everything by hand once we get to that part. So I've got the metering needle installed with the spring and the pivot pin. And now it's time to put the metering diaphragm back on. Yeah, see, I don't love that. It doesn't look perfect to me. Actually, let me see if I have one of these diaphragms here. Might have one. Yes, I do. Partial from another kit. So this is, you can see the difference between the two. This one's kind of creased. This one is nice and flat, pliable, much more pliable, and this one is creased. That's usually from the ethanol content in fuel. It eats away at them, and just over time. So 2 parts are required for this. A metering diaphragm. Yeah, see, that one's not all that bad. I've seen way worse. Usually they get kind of crusty and hard, and the gasket. So what we're trying to do is line this gasket up with this hole right here. Put it all back together. Now, what way did this go in? So that faced backwards, so don't think it matters that much. That's what's given us the pulses, I believe. So that one like that, feel okay. So this goes back on just like this. 4 screws. So again, I don't like doing it torqued to, because what the last thing you want to do is strip out one of these finely threaded carburetor holes. Not then you can really know that you're going to be into a replacement carburetor. Sorry, I've been covering it the whole time here with my fat hand. Okay, so we have the metering side. I'll figured out. And as I said, this pump diaphragm doesn't actually look that bad, so I'm going to try and use this one again. Now the pump diaphragm goes against the body of the carburetor, just like that. And then, how does this sit? That's better. And I get the holes to line up. And then this goes right here. And usually on other types of carburetors, there'd be a throttle stop. Okay, so that looks like it all lines up. All right, let's pop it all back in and see what happens. All right, so this came on. Is there a gasket here? No gasket. All right, so that fuel line is kind of just tucked in there. Right, we had to snap this back in. All right, now throttle and choke linkages. I believe this goes in like this. Being a bit pesky here. Maybe I have to do it while it's snapped out. Let's try that. Nope, that's not the answer either. It goes in first. Ah, yes. That looks like it might do it. Gotta be careful here. I don't want to snap anything. There. Got it in. Let's get this snapped back in where it needs to go. Oh, now I've done it. That looks right there. Okay. So, got the throttle hooked up. Sorry, choke. Now it's time for throttle. Can't see very well in here. All right, looks like we're sorted out. So we've got on-off position, which actually triggers the choke as well for that first start. Then we will throw the air box back on and see what happens. To be honest, I'm not really hopeful. I've played around with enough of these that I realize that it's never too easy. have to get a better tool for working on these. I'm sure that worked. So in the interest of time, I would probably normally just do this by hand. And I'm not going to do it up overly tight right now because I'm probably going to have to tear it apart again. All right, so let's fuel it up and get some 50-to-1 in there. I only use the Stihl 50-to-1 mix. 5 liters of oil to 100 milliliters of Stihl oil. And let's see what happens. So before I fire it up, this kind of stuff always happens. I forgot to put the fuel line back on right down in here. So obviously I picked the saw up, feeling pretty good about myself. Go to try and carry it over to where I'm starting it, and fuel all over the floor. So always best to double check, triple check, quadruple check what you've done. Make sure that fuel line's back on, and we're ready to go here. So flip it on to full choke so we can get that carburetor full of fuel. See what happens here. It's a good sign. Not that lucky apparently. Try full choke again. Well, it did fire up. Not quite sure. All right, so I just pulled the spark plug out. I like to try and find out if it's, sorry, better view here, if it's getting fuel or not. I don't think it is. So it is probably the carburetor issue. It did kind of kick for me there, which got me a little bit excited, but I don't think it's getting any more fuel. So let me try again with some more diagnoses here. All right, well, one other thing I wanted to try before I gave up on this carburetor, as you can see, I've got it all apart again, is cleaning out all of the little needles and valves. So I've got a piece of a wire brush here. I'm just going through these needles here, and they were kind of plugged before, but I think I've seemed to have freed them up. So anything where debris or that crappy oil mixture that we found in here at the beginning can plug up, I like to get rid of. So I'm just going to put this all back together using the same parts. Actually, I found a new diaphragm and a new metering diaphragm and a new pump diaphragm. So I'll put it all back together and see if we can't get it started. And then if not, it's new carburetor time. So stand by as I do that. Put the screen back in there. It can be pesky. Put the screen back in there the way it needs to be in. Okay, so needle, spring, lots of practice putting these little suckers back in here, so if it looks like it's easy, it wasn't for a long time. Make sure that's almost square with the top of the carburetor, and I've got appropriate movement here. Gasket. Gasket first always for the metering diaphragm. Gasket against the carb body, and it's the other way around on the pump side of things. All good there. Really got to figure out a better view for this. And then again, the pump side of things. And we put it all back together again. Fuel line, don't forget that again. See if this is a better view. Everything just works so much better after you've taken it apart 3 or 4 times. Wow, look at that. Okay, fuel line, choke, throttle, airbox. And after this, I'll probably give up. Put another carb on it. I've learned that you can try and fix these as much as you want, but you know, for the $15 an aftermarket carb is it really worth it? And there's other projects you could be working on. All right, let's give it one final go. And that, my friends, is the sound of a new carburetor. Stay tuned. I'll order one up and we'll go through it, and I'll show you how to install it and hopefully show you it working. If this was any good, you enjoyed it, like, subscribe for more videos. Take care. Have a good day. All right. Now that we've got the new replacement carburetor, It's time to button it all back up. Whenever I take something apart and leave it apart for, you know, a few days, I like to put the hardware back on to where it goes, just because little nuts like that are easy to lose, especially if I'm doing other stuff. All right. Pop. That's not good. There we are. Pop the linkage out. Make it easier for us to slide the new carburetor on. Fuel line back on. The linkage back in there. One thing that I've actually screwed up before is this little retention spring for the kill switch. It's a ground, so this switch electrical connection right here makes a connection with this ground when you flip it on and off. So that's what tells the ignition coil not to spark, which essentially shuts the engine off if it's running. So this clip has to go, I don't know if you guys can see it that well here. This clip has to go on top of this linkage. It can easily get trapped underneath. So make sure it goes on top. Sometimes I feel like it's a 3 or 4 hand job, but oh, and this linkage has to go on top as well. So before I get too ahead of myself, make sure everything's lined up. There we are. Snaps in like that. Throttle linkage goes onto the side just like before. Got it working there. Excellent. The choke linkage goes on. To actuate it fully first in order to get it to slide in. Perfect. So now when you actuate the lever here, it moves the choke. And now it's just putting the airbox back on. I don't have a lot of hope for this replacement carburetor. Unfortunately, it's kind of hit and miss sometimes with stuff that isn't OEM spec. So if this carburetor isn't doing exactly what I want it to do, I'll probably buy a used but good OEM carburetor and do a quick rebuild kit on that. Oh boy. This nut is always the trickiest here for me. What have I done before in the past to get that on there? 2 fingers. Yeah. So 2 fingers, and then you just kind of got to work at least 1 thread on. And I can use the power tools. I don't like that either. It's kind of an awkward spot. All right. Air filter back on, and it's ready to start. All right, let's give it a try. That's promising. adjustment, which is in through the side here. I can show that to you guys. All right, so the idle adjustment here is on the side. You have to go through the handle, through the case, and there's a screw on the side of the carburetor, flathead screw. And if you turn it clockwise, it will increase the idle, and counterclockwise will decrease. So I think I've got it now to a spot where I like it. Let's fire it up and I'll show you. So now all I have to do is button it back up and take it for a spin. All right, now it's time to test it out. On position. Perfect. If you've enjoyed this video and you've enjoyed my content, do me a favor, like and subscribe, and I'll be putting more out. Take care. Thanks again.